Hello, my name is Hessa and I will be talking about the 2000 Mozambique floods. Mozambique offers an interesting example for natural disaster management due to the geography, social, and economic challenges the country continues to face. Let's start by looking at the weather patterns and hydrologic features that are unique to this part of the world. The climate in Mozambique is warm and tropical with temperature averaging 28 degrees Celsius. The summer season is long, rainy, humid, and very hot with intense sunlight. The north of the country features a narrow coastline sloping upward into hills and mountains. As for the south, it's characterized by wide lowlands and several rivers running through Mozambique to the Indian Ocean, the largest and most important of which is the Zambezi. To understand how these floods occurred, we must go back in time to 1999. Mozambique saw heavy rainfall in the summer of 1999 between the months of October and November. Following that, in the early months of 2000, January and February, the country witnessed another period of heavy rains due to tropical storms. This further saturated the land and water surfaces. Three rivers overflew as a result, exceeding their banks. These rivers were the Nkimari, the Mbelozi, and the Limpopo. By March, Cyclone Eileen made landfall from the sea, turning this natural disaster to one of the most devastating in the country's history. According to some estimates, the country had 75% of its yearly rainfall in just 3 days, and in 5 weeks, 1,400 square kilometers of land drowned, and malaria, cholera, and diarrhea overtook the cities and villages of Mozambique. This event occurred over a period of 3 to 5 weeks across southern Africa, where the natural disaster frequency is estimated to be moderate to high. According to the IORMS, Mozambique experienced 10 droughts, 20 floods, 13 tropical cyclones, 18 epidemics, and one earthquake from 1956 through 2008 alone. Many residents were displaced by the flooding, losing their homes and climbing onto roofs and treetops waiting for rescue. The country's infrastructure was shattered, with roads, railways, and bridges destroyed. The medical centers were submerged underwater, and the water supply was contaminated. Last but not least, the roads were cut off as huge potholes began to appear. Diseases such as malaria, cholera, and diarrhea started spreading, leading to higher rates of death. Communications became chaotic as phone lines stopped working. Almost all crops and livestock were lost to the floods. Markets suffered, lacking basic necessities such as food, which caused prices to surge. 460,000 people lost their livelihoods, 10% of them were children, and 800 people lost their lives. The flooding affected Zimbabwe, Swaziland, Botswana, and South Africa as well. The president of the country at the time repeatedly appealed to the international community for humanitarian assistance. He requested $160 million for reconstruction and emergency aid. The government used boats to evacuate the flood zones, and other countries sent in helicopters to help with the rescue efforts. It took the country more than 3 months to recover, losing $450 million in the process and drowning more in debt. All of the country's economic progress since the end of its civil war was thrown into disarray. Housing, health, agriculture, and education were severely affected. Generally, the standard of living was brought way down. Problems such as slow response, low GDP per capita, government corruption, and regional disputes prolonged the suffering of the people of Mozambique. These challenges brought up concerns over the emergence of a culture which relied on handouts and external resources in managing natural disasters. The government and NGOs worked together to find ways of resettlement and reconstruction that focused on self-reliance and early response. For example, as soon as the flooding was over, the soil was desalinated and cleaned for replanting. To control the floods, researchers from all around the world began studying the region's climate and river system. This helped improve predictions and mitigations of the damage. These efforts are supported by organizations such as the World Bank and many more. More importantly, the Mozambican government is highly invested in early warning programs as well as emergency training for residents. The World Bank is working on enhancing the capacity for independent research and analysis within Mozambican societies to develop strong disaster mitigation and preparedness programs. Rules and regulations in Mozambique have seen many improvements over the years. In 1977, the country passed a key law establishing the Department for Combating Natural Disasters, and in 1999, it passed a law establishing the National Policy on Disaster Management, which created the National Disaster Management Institute, replacing the DCND. These developments signaled a switch in the country's approach from reaction to preparedness when it comes to do with natural disasters. The early warning system provided forecasts of flood risks, detection, and monitoring of flooding. The data they collect is used to put out warnings when necessary, allowing time for coordinated response and mobilization of resources.